Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Future Tech. It's me, Charlie Sell, Board Director at Major Group, where I get a chance to interview, have open discussions, find out the stories of senior people within the world of technology, all on behalf of promoting STEM alongside our STEM Ambassador Association, and for those many young people who are wanting to know more about careers within technology. So I'm really pleased to have Katie Nykanen with me today. Katie's a Chief Product and Technology Officer. Past companies have been AdStream, QA, really quite recognised companies and brands that are technology first businesses. So Katie will have a pretty clear and a really solid in-depth knowledge of what it is working within tech businesses, and really interested to hear more about her story and how she got into technology herself. So without further ado, Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Let's jump straight in and just tell us your story. How did you get into technology?
Well, it was a complete fluke. I certainly didn't go through my childhood and school thinking I'm going to go and work in technology. I started doing a degree course, and as part of the degree, I needed to do a work placement. And my dad knew the IT director at B&Q, which was part of the Kingfisher Group, and had a word and got me a work placement for 6 months. So that was as complicated and as planned as it was. So I joined. I had no idea what an IT department did. I'd worked actually as it goes in B&Q as a checkout assistant through sixth form college and that kind of thing, but I hadn't no clue what head office functions were. So I joined, and for 6 months I did kind of admin tasks. I took minutes of meetings, I organised conferences and board sessions, and did various things like that. And a couple of times I started to kind of ask some questions about, well, what is this thing you're talking about? Way back then, they were actually putting new computer systems into all of the B&Q stores. It was quite revolutionary what was happening at the time, modernising a lot of the systems. And I started asking questions. What does that box do? What does that box do? What's that? What's going to happen when that happens? How does that work? That kind of thing. And it just got me interested. But I'll start by saying, and something I think will be a bit of a theme of my conversation today, is that I'm not a techie. I can't write code. I couldn't go and fix your laptop. I'm not that kind of person, but I've been in technology for 25 years, and I'm more recently as a CTO for the last 7 years. So I think it's really important when we start to talk about people getting into STEM careers that you don't necessarily have to be what you might traditionally think is somebody who's kind of very geeky and really into writing code, or really into the kind of engineering side of technology. You can still be very heavily involved in it, and that's really the route for me. So after that work placement, I worked for a couple more years in sort of project coordination, quite junior admin roles. And then I was given the opportunity to do a business analysis course. Didn't really know what that was, but went along. A business analysis is really about understanding processes and how things get done. So I started to work on projects, for example, implementing a call center. So we worked out how phone calls came into the business, where they got routed, who needed to do what with them, all of that kind of thing. And we put a system into a call center. And the whole benefit of this for the business was saving money, being more efficient, better customer service, some reductions in complexity of activities in the local stores, and centralizing that, providing more consistent service. And it started to get me interested in how technology could solve problems and make things better for businesses. So again, coming back to that idea that I'm not there going, oh, I'm really interested in this real cool technical thing. For me, it was about what are the problems that technology can solve in businesses, and what are the benefits that can be brought if you use technology well in a business. I kind of continued through my time at B&Q, kind of got more and more responsibility, started doing some project management, managing some teams. At the time, we were implementing SAP, which is a big corporate system for managing finance and logistics and supply chain and stock, and that kind of thing. So I was involved in a few projects there, to the point where in 2005 I left, and I'd been at the business for quite a few years by then, and I was managing quite complex projects. But I moved to live in Dubai. And that was a big sort of change. And I actually I didn't have a job. I sort of thought, I'll get a job in Dubai. And when I was there, I ended up working for Nokia, which at the time was the world's biggest mobile phone company. and they did a combination of both managing and building and manufacturing and distributing mobile phones, but they also ran the mobile operators. So I used those kind of project management skills from a retail store, managing kind of a finance system, looking after stock and logistics, and put those into play, building a mobile phone network in the Middle East. So for 3 years, I was looking after the implementation of things like SMS and MMS sending back before the days of WhatsApp and other popular communication tools. We introduced internet browsing on phones, which I remember at the time was we were all going, "Why are we going to use this? No one's ever going to never catch on." But it was great, and it was a fantastic experience for me. So I lived there for quite a long time in the end. But during my time at Nokia, it was a really good sort of cultural awakening as well, because I worked with people from all over the world, which I absolutely loved and really kind of got massive amount of learning out of. But I think, again, it's interesting how those kind of generic business analysis and project management skills I was able to then transfer totally different from a retail environment into a telco environment. And interestingly, after my time at Nokia was up, which was about 7 years on, I ended up moving to AdStream, who were a product business, technology business in the advertising industry. So again, completely different from Nokia. And finally, most recently, I was in an education business at QA. So a lot of those skills, I've really jumped around, I suppose, industries, but really using and kind of honing those skills as I've gone. So things like the business analysis, things like understanding how things work, processes, how teams work, and how things move around between businesses to get things done. And then looking at the best ways to get technology to support that. It's quite easy to jump actually from one industry to another because it's very similar sorts of problems, but equally very interesting for me to have learnt about so many different industries. So yeah, I've done sort of 4 big businesses in my career and moved around kind of between those. And as I say, very, very different industries, but I certainly never set out on a journey to join a technology business or to be a CTO. And in the end, it worked out really well for me.
Yeah, well, fantastic. And what a story. I just thank you for your openness at the beginning, and because you made such a poignant point about how you weren't a techie, like technology may not have even been on your radar necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
but with an open mind. And the notes I took here, being up for work placements, so going blind, asking
Mm-hmm.
questions, having that inquisitive mindset, that
Yeah.
that allowed you to sort of find an industry that you probably wouldn't have known before. And I think, as you said, maybe this will be part of our conversation, because it's at the moment it's a shame that it has to be by accident for girls or women to find
Mm-hmm.
technology. That we're on a quest to make STEM, and especially technology within the wider STEM community, more appealing, I guess, as it doesn't, exactly to your point, it really doesn't have to be for hardcore pure coding engineers
Mm-hmm.
to thrive in a stream now, the technology stream of STEM, which is so varied, isn't it? Everything from
Yes.
products to, as you said, to business analysis, to UI, UX, all the way
Yeah.
through to engineering.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts? Thinking about what we can do to promote STEM in the wider and technology within the wider community. What do you think we can do better within schools or colleges, or just in general, to be able to promote STEM?
Yeah, so I suppose it's probably about 8 or 9 years ago. I think I probably became more aware, and probably I just didn't notice. It just was the way it was always. That I was always in a team where it was mostly men. You might have had the odd woman in the team who was a project manager, sometimes business analysis analyst, sometimes a tester, but 80-90% of your engineering team would be male. And it never bothered me. It wasn't a problem for me, but it's sort of, I suppose when I was younger, I just didn't even really notice. And then as I got to become more senior and I was managing larger teams, and I was starting to manage people who had never been managed by a woman before, and again never had problems with that, never came across issues, but it became a vision. It's something I noticed and something other people pointed out to me. So it's something I started as I became sort of more senior and had more opportunities to speak at events or talk at technical conferences or meetups or networking events, to start to be a bit more vocal, I suppose, about what was going on and why was it that we were not seeing women more joining the tech industry. and even more so getting more senior, and to the point where they're in positions of leadership in technology, which is still today a huge problem. And interestingly, I think the numbers today are in the early 20%, and it hasn't really changed in the last sort of 7 or 8 years, as far as I can see. When I go to CIO, CTO meetups, it's still the same kind of group of people and the same percentage of people in the fairly low 20s that you see attending. So, I started to get quite vocal about that, started to talk a bit more about it, started to be quite passionate about what we could do about it, and encouraging girls, particularly sort of early kind of school leavers, university leavers, people who were looking maybe for they left university with a degree in something but didn't really know what to do, giving people like that an opportunity to come into a technology business and use their skills or learn some skills on the job. So I think I suppose, just before we get maybe to what we could do, I think the reason why it matters, and if you come back to how I started this conversation about using technology to solve real problems are experienced by different people in different ways. So different people, if you think about an end user application, so even something like Facebook or TikTok or Snapchat, those applications are used by different people in different ways. And if the only people who build those applications have all had the same level of education, the same personal experiences, the same professional career path, are they really going to build an application that suits all that massive, diverse pool of end users? And the answer is no, they're not. And we can take that in the very massive market kind of social media perspective, but also in smaller and more niche kind of business to business kind of systems. So it is actually really important for businesses to have that diverse pool, as well as your social responsibility and doing the right thing. It's actually really important to build a big product, a good product, that you've got the right people and having that mixture of people. So one of the things over the last few years, which has been great to see, is through the rise of apprenticeships and boot camps and so on, you can see more people having opportunities later in life to join the technology sort of workforce, I suppose. So we are seeing a better mix, not a great mix, but we're seeing a better mix through those opportunities. And I think it's important to sort of point out that it's not now essential that you have gone through a university education in computer science to be able to get into a technology role, even a coding role, because through apprenticeships or degree apprenticeships, where you learn and earn at the same time, you can actually reskill or learn some new skills and still earn money at the same time, which is the only option for lots of people. It's not possible to go off and have 3 or 4 years not earning any money. So I think that's really important. But I think also we shouldn't restrict ourselves just to looking at young people, because actually there's a whole sort of communities of people at different stages in life who also are interested, but maybe feel intimidated or felt like they never had the opportunity when they were younger to get into these industries. So if you think about mums who've taken time off to have children, coming back to the workforce, and potentially the role that they did before they took their leave doesn't exist anymore, or they're struggling to find roles, or they feel like they want to do something more flexibly, because a lot of technology roles do allow hybrid working or more working from home. So that we see quite a lot of people in that sort of space, or people having career changes later in life. So going, well, I've done that for years and actually that manual task doesn't exist anymore. So how can I get more into something that's got a future? So I think it's really important that we kind of open our minds to the technology workforce just looking more diverse generally in all shapes and sizes and all kind of colours and backgrounds and sort of social ethnicities, I suppose, because all of those things create a better pool of workforce, which then creates those better quality products that really are better fit for market. So I think what can we do as employers and as CTOs and senior technology leadership is look for those opportunities. So I think 6 or 7 years ago, the technology market, hiring engineers and testers, was mad in London. I can't think of another word. We were literally having to put an advert up, offering people on the same day because they were so in demand. You could not get people for love nor money. We were paying people straight out of university 60, 70,000 pound salaries, and they were leaving a week later to go and get more money somewhere else. It was insane. It's not like that anymore. Things have settled. There has been a big push, and the industry, sort of the pool, I suppose, of available resources has settled a bit, which is good to see. But I think as you're planning your future workforce, don't just assume you need to go and hire experienced people from the market. Think a little bit more strategically, think a little bit further ahead, and think, well, if we took on 2 apprentices today on, let's face it, much lower salaries, 2 years from now, they're going to be really experienced. They're going to know our business inside out. They will help the rest of our team during the time they're here. And we're going to have 2 really great people who are really sort of loyal to our business and are going to be a great addition to our workforce. And often I mentor an apprentice who is into her 4th year of a degree apprenticeship with KPMG. And she is doing phenomenally well. And she's absolutely brilliant. And she's been working on some really complicated projects for 3 years. So it's only really the first year she was there. She didn't know that much. Within 6 to 12 months, she's already being an effective part of the team. So I think we all have a responsibility there, I think, to just be a bit more open-minded and look for ways to bring people into our teams, because there's loads of people who are keen to do it. And take a chance on someone who's maybe not got exactly the experience already, because they've got skills that they can probably learn. And if they didn't quite know what they were doing before, they'll soon pick it up. So I think it's really important just to be much more open-minded to that.
Yeah, I think they were really, really good points. And I couldn't agree with you more about how important it is that it's the companies themselves and the leadership within the companies that are thinking about this as a solution to a problem rather than just pure corporate social responsibility. And as you said, scarce skills is a real problem. It's a board agenda, isn't it?
Yep.
How to not only hire good people, but also diverse people for, again, those points you said earlier,
Yep.
to make your products that much better, more appropriate, better fit than the competition. So there's a commercial angle to it as
Yes.
much as a CSR,
Yep.
and there's, as you said earlier, there's also the benefit of being able to retain really good people and develop them rather than having to pay overinflated salaries. So thank you for that. And that's such a lovely lens coming from looking from the business perspective. And so let's switch it now to our young people who will be listening to the podcast and thinking, well, how do I get a foot in the door? And so what 1 or 2 bits of advice can you give for people to be able to stand out and get that foot in the door?
I'd start by saying the school system still really disappoints me. I have teenagers who've just taken GCSE choices, so they're in year 9, and I look at the things they're learning and I think, how much of this is really going to be relevant to them in 7 or 8 years when they enter the workforce, or even sooner than that. So I just don't feel they meet the needs of the modern day. When I think about really good, useful skills, which are useful across all sorts of jobs, whether in technology teams, in the technology industry itself, or just completely outside of it, or even just general life skills, things like managing a basic project. So being able to understand, I've got to fix this thing, how am I going to go about it? And thinking methodically, thinking logically, identifying risks and issues. Almost anything you do in life, you're going to have to do those sorts of things. So why are we not kind of teaching kids that kind of thing? Things like product design and UX. Again, our children are so kind of aware of these things from a user perspective. We should be encouraging them to understand how those decisions have been made to get to the thing that they're interacting with on a daily basis. Things like engineering and software design and IT, sort of infrastructure and architecture and testing and stuff like that. I just think there are way better ways we could be encouraging our school children to be into that. I know that there are programs and there are pockets of progress, but I think that the core curriculum is not geared up for it. So, when you get to those GCSE choices, by the time you've done all the mandatory subjects, there's no space to fit in the subjects which are really going to be, I'd say, the most useful. On the other hand, what I would say is it doesn't matter. So I don't think it actually matters. So I think what I'd say right now is, in school, and I've said to my children, you should do, with the limited choices you have, do the things you're interested in, because then you're going to do well at them. You'll come out of school with decent, your best efforts in terms of your school results. and then it's a case of what do you want to do next. You're not going to tie yourself down if you choose not to do computer science for GCSE. And frankly, what you learn in computer science at GCSE is probably not going to be what you use every day if you end up being an engineer. So I really wouldn't worry too much about that. Do the things you enjoy. Make sure your school experience is as enjoyable as possible, because you're more likely to come out of it with the best results that you can get. And then I think at that point, when you're at the school leaving stage and you're considering options, whether you have the opportunity to go to further education or whether you have to, get straight into a working role, look at things like apprenticeships and degree apprenticeships. Rishi Sunak just today has announced another round of funding for apprenticeships. And, I think in the news, they're often talking about things like plumbing and carpentry and the more physical skills, which are obviously really important as well. But it also applies to technology, product design, project management, software engineering. There's loads of great technology apprenticeships as well, including things like AI. And obviously, there's a lot of press about that at the moment. But we are going to have a huge need for people to get into data science and artificial intelligence over the next 10, 20 years. So, I just really encourage people to kind of look into that. And if you think now, what we're imagining the future of AI might be, you could be part of that kind of, 4 or 5 years from now. If you're leaving school and going into the workplace, apprenticeships already exist in those spaces that you could get yourself into some really fascinating kind of career opportunities. So I think the main thing is don't worry about it too young. Really don't worry about it. The only other point I'd make, and I talk about this actually when I talk at C-suite and sort of exec level discussions, is we used to talk about the technology industry and we used to talk about technology companies, but I think you will be surprised by the time most people who are going to listen to this discussion get to work. I talk to banks, I talk to retailers. They are now calling themselves financial technology businesses or fast-moving consumer goods technology businesses. So we used to say, do you want a career in tech? Well, every career is pretty much going to be in tech in the future. Whether you're working for a company like Meta or Google or Amazon, or whether you're working for a high street retailer or a travel company, the reality is your role is going to be largely led by technology. So don't be afraid of it. Don't worry about the options that you choose in school. It will not limit you as you leave school and you choose your further options. Be really open-minded as to what you can do, because a lot of the skills that you learn in life generally will be super useful in those sorts of roles in the future.
Wow, Katie, thank you so much. I think those were 3 just fantastic bits of career advice, and how refreshing to be able to hear, from people who have also experienced and have hired big teams, and obviously having children yourself. That I couldn't agree with you more. At school, picking the subjects that you enjoy, it will give you the best chance of getting the best grades. And then totally agree with you about thinking about apprenticeships. And not everyone, university is incredibly expensive. That limits options for some people.
Yeah, it really does.
Following up on apprenticeships, following up on earn to live, or what was it you said? The learn and earn. Love that. Learn and earn. And I couldn't agree with you more that I think every business in the future will have a technology focus and be underpinned by it. So let's not be afraid. So, wow. Well, look, Katie, time has flown by, as always, when these topics just are so engaging. So, lastly, just say massive thank you for me. So, Katie, a massive thank you for being on the podcast.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
And to our listeners, that's another episode of Future Tech. So, as many of you know, the podcast is shared on the STEM Ambassador Association network of schools and colleges, as well as on the Major Group website and on Spotify. So thank you for everyone who has tuned in or listening to the podcast. And one more time, big thank you to Katie.
Thank you very much.